Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we're going to be going over Momocon, Gateway Legends, and Combo Breakers. There was a lot of pretty stacked regionals that happened this weekend and we're going to be going over all of them. Starting off with Momocon, whose top 8 consisted of Chunky Kong and Web JP in 7th, Wrath and Anathema in 5th, Aaron in 4th, DD in 3rd, Sonics in 2nd, and Light in 1st. Now, the only really big surprises of people that didn't actually make the top 8 were Cola and Cosmos, who actually both finished out at ninth. Cola losing to Sonics in the winner's side of bracket and then DQing, and then Cosmos, who had actually a pretty decent loser run after losing fairly early on in the bracket, and a majority of his run was also done with Joker, which I think is fairly interesting. He lost to Shane in the winner's side of bracket, and actually Chunky Kong in the loser's side of bracket, which I know he did play Aegis in that set, but to my knowledge, I think most of everything else was done with Joker, and he said that he wants that to be his full main, so it's going to take a long time for him to get adjusted. Joker is not a very easy tournament character, so we're going to have to see how Cosmos finds success with that. If he goes back to Aegis, what's going to happen there, but we kind of need a Joker at the top level right now with Leo kind of shifting more to that Byleth and Aegis combination, but maybe Leo will go back, but regardless if Leo goes back or not, you still have Cosmos, who's probably going to be repping that Joker now, which is always cool, because Joker is just really a cool character. In 7th place, you had both Chunky Kong and Web JP, and I want to talk about Web JP because he did his run, at least to my knowledge, entirely with Sheik, and you don't really see Sheik at the top level a ton in North America after Void stopped playing super seriously, and in Europe you have it with Mr. R, in Japan you have a couple of them, most notably I would say I'm though, but NA's kind of lacked that top level Sheik, and I definitely think that Web JP can step up to that role. He's been an up and coming for a little bit now, and he's just been having some of these more impressive runs. This is probably his best one today. Again, he looked incredible here, and Chunky Kong as well, top 8ing a almost major level tournament with Donkey Kong. That is ridiculous, especially solo Donkey Kong. Like, I think secondary Donkey Kong is actually still pretty slept on because it's a really, really good option against certain matchups because the advantage state of Donkey Kong is so strong. But solo maining it, going through some of the trenches matchups, it can be incredibly difficult, and it's another amazing result from Chunky Kong. Like, he's just such a talented player. I would maybe even argue the best solo main Donkey Kong, because while Hikaru and Akala obviously still have some really good results, they aren't really a solo main. Chunky Kong's kind of the only one doing it with just DK, which is extremely impressive. In 5th place, you have both Wrath and Anathema, two players that I think are pretty typical at this part of the bracket. I mean, they are just both ridiculous. Anathema gets his results over and over again, one of the most consistent players in the world, and I feel like the least talked about Rob, even though his technical prowess is by far the best. Like, Anathema's combo game is unrivaled by pretty much anyone in the world. Wrath as a name you don't hear much about as well, because he just doesn't really go to a ton of tournaments, but Wrath is ridiculously good. Like, I love his playstyle of Sonic, and I'm pretty sure him and Sonics have been grinding a ton because they both placed amazing at this tournament. I think they work together as well, just trading matchups, trading knowledge, which is honestly what you should be doing at the top level. You know, bring your fellow character reps up, because even if another Sonic player starts doing well, if you can share that knowledge and bring each other up, then you're both going to be getting better results, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters. But a huge shout out to Wrath and Anathema, both playing amazingly at this tournament. In 4th place, you're going to have Aaron, who, like Anathema, is kind of an unsung hero right now just because he is extremely good, but people, when they're talking about Diddy Kong, especially from NA, because there's a lot of Japan Diddy Kongs as well, they're going to bring up Tweak most notably, but Aaron, I would still say, is the second best Diddy in the world. He gets crazy consistent results, gets a bunch of good wins. It feels like every tournament he goes to, most notably here, he got a nice win on Anathema, was able to get top 8 winner's side of bracket, so he should be super happy with that. And as well, in 3rd place, you have Didi, who, like Wrath, is an unsung hero because they don't go to any events and they're from Georgia. I mean, Georgia just has a lot of hitters in general, but Georgia's secret talent, it's like actually insane. And Didi is very talented, super young as well, so you got a bright future there. And he used mainly a combination of Steve and PT. From what I saw, his main success was from Steve, but I would still like to see more PT because I'm just a huge PT fan, and also his PT is insanely good. So Didi and Wrath, Aaron and Anathema's two unsung players, two players I just want to see more of. And at Momocon, you got to see all of them perform at the top level. And in the grand finals, you had Light versus Sonic. Sonic's getting second, Light winning the whole thing. And I think after the DQs of Tweak and Meister, most people would have expected this, but I definitely didn't expect the fashion that it happened, because Sonic's actually reverse 3-0'd Light in winner semifinals, which is pretty crazy. And then after that, Light 3-0'd Wrath, 3-0'd Aaron, 3-0'd Didi, 3-0'd Sonics in the first set, and 3-1'd him in the reset. He was not happy about losing that first set and just ran him down. But I do got to give shoutouts to Sonics here, because he just looked like he was playing perfect, especially his set versus DD. DD tweeted after, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I agree, because I don't think there is anything he could have done. Sonics literally plays it perfectly. It is actually insane how patient he is. It also kind of shows, again, Sonic is definitely a top 2 character. Steve is still number 1 for sure, but when Sonic is playing like that, it literally looks impossible for people to win. Like, Sonic is actually ridiculous. Definitely still a top 10 player, even though we haven't seen him in a little bit. And kind of the same thing for Light as well. He just smothers people. His pressure is unreal, and both these guys performed super well at this event. I mean, they are the first and second seeds with the DQ, so it makes sense their performances. Next up, you have the top 8 for Combo Breaker. In 7th place, you had So Good, Pop, and Raven King. 5th place, you had Esam and Arctis. 4th place, you had Masternade. 3rd place, you had Big Mac. 2nd place, you had Kobe. And 1st place, you had DeBuzz. And the only players that really fell super early outside of the top 8 are going to be MVD, who fell at 9th, which honestly isn't too big of a deal. You have Z at 17th as well, Frostbite at 17th. So nothing crazy, no super big upsets at this tournament. You also have a fairly notable DQ of Riddles, who I believe was the first seed, but outside of that, really good tournament. In 7th place, you had So Good, Pop, and Raven King, and I believe Raven King was seeded to get top 8 at this tournament. He's been proficient with the Joker for a while now, so this placement definitely makes a lot of sense from him. But So Good, Pop actually popped off super hard, and they top 8 this thing with Wii Fit. Again, this was a fairly stacked event, and getting top 8 with Wii Fit is not something that you see every day. You have Varun making some results. Most notably, you have InJelly in Japan, but this is another good result for Wii Fit players to add to the list, and it is a very small list, so shoutouts to So Good, Pop. In 5th place, you had Arctis and Esam, and they both entered from winner side of top 8. Arctis beat Skits to get in, and Esam beat Kobe, which is actually a pretty big upset by him. It was 3-0, so that's pretty good for Esam, getting his first top 8 at a big tournament in a little bit. And then unfortunately for both these guys, once they were in top 8, they both did lose both of their sets. Both of them did have a Game 5 in there, though, so that's got to feel good. Esam ran into DeBuzz, which has historically been a pretty rough match for him. He tried Brawler, and he tried Pikachu to no success. And then versus Masternard as well. I think that I mispronounced that video at the start of the video, so my bad about that. But Esam tried again, both Brawler and Pikachu, and it didn't work. And it's not the end of the world again. 5th place is actually a pretty good placement at this tournament. We haven't seen Esam get top 8 at a fairly big tournament in a little while. He also hasn't been going to as much stuff, so you can kind of give him a little bit of slack, but it must be nice for him to get another result. He also won doubles with MVD, so shouts to that. That's a bit of a static team that I did miss. And then Arctis as well, just a good result for him. He's been on the up and up lately. Definitely a Falcon player to keep your eye on. There's a lot of Falcons that just seemingly popped up. You have Jogaboo, Karage, Sean, and Fatality are still massive threats, so huge shoutouts to Arctis for this run. In 4th place, you had Masternard, and 3rd place, Big Mac, two of the biggest runs of the tournament. And again, it's kind of similar character combinations because you have Masternard with PT and C, but mainly PT for him. And then for Big Mac, you had Sheik. So kind of the same thing that we had earlier at Momocon, but for Masternard, who had a crazy loser run, by the way, he beat Sandy, Crows, and Skits in a row to be able to make top 8. Once in top 8, they were able to beat So Good, Pop, and Esam. And again, I love seeing the PT. I still think PT is a really good character. You've watched my video about characters that I think are going to come back into the meta. PT was one of them. I'm kind of just manifesting it because the character has always been good. People just kind of stopped playing them for some reason. And then Big Mac as well. Another great result for Sheik. I talked about it earlier. Sheik doesn't have a ton of results in the NA scene outside of Void, but this is another one to add to the list. They were able to beat Arctis in the winner side of bracket, as well as getting some pretty nice ups along the way. They were able to beat Noodle, another Wii Fit that performed really well this tournament. Again, I don't know why Wii Fit was popping off this weekend, but there's like a trend of characters, PT, Wii Fit, Sheik. That was the golden weekend for these characters because all their reps did pretty well. In 2nd place, you had Kobe. 1st place, you had DeBuzz. And huge shouts to Kobe for being able to place his seed of 2nd because he was 2nd seed after the Riddles DQ. After getting upset by Esam, he had a crazy loser run. He beat Raven King, Arctis, Masternard, and Big Mac, but he did fall to DeBuzz. And DeBuzz destroyed this tournament. He absolutely owned, did not drop a single game combination of Rosalina and Olimar is really strong for him. So that has to be feeling good going into his next major. It feels like DeBuzz is back at his full force as of late. All of his last performances have been strong for him. So really interested to see how he does in this next major. Again, I think it is Crown 3, but I could be wrong about that. But I'm excited to see DeBuzz wherever he plays. Next up, you're going to have Gateway Legends, and I do want to mention a couple runs outside of the top 8 for this tournament. Most notably, you had Mutes, who got upset extremely early on by D3 Will, who, to my knowledge, is playing D3. I mean, it's in the name. He is playing DDD, and he beat Mutes, a potential top 20 caliber player, in the world. But then after that, Munis still went on a crazy loser run. He beat Curse, who's an amazing Sora player, Wilds, Shattuck, Geist, Doorstop before falling to Beast Mode Paul. Like, this is still a really good run from Munis, all things considered. Got a bunch of strong wins along the way, so it's not an amazing placement for him, but it's not the end of the world. You had a Paul Kage who had a crazy loser run, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But he had a crazy loser run because he lost to Yoda Cage, a Bowser Jr. player, and he beat Apollo Kage. Like, that is actually ridiculous. There were so many crazy runs here. Again, we can't go over all of them, but if there is one that you want me to cover, let me know down below. But now, on to the top 8. In 7th place, you had both Epic Gabriel and Icy Mist. Starting off with Icy Mist, who was able to get wins on Wilds and Ice Knight in the winner's side of bracket. And then to get into top 8, they were able to get a big win over Send. And what I feel like is a fairly tough matchup, but Samus is a ridiculous character, as well as Icy Mist probably being the best Samus that we have right now in North America. I'd still say best in the world probably goes to Yara or Siski, especially after Battle of BC. But Icy Mist is ridiculously good, like just insanely talented. Epic Gabriel as well was able to beat Skittles at a regional, which is like really impressive. He gets like a massive power up here, as well as Yoda Cage, who again beat Apollo Kage with Bowser Jr. It was actually ridiculous. Like, Epic Gabriel, it's been a little bit since I've seen him make top 8 at these tournaments, so super happy for his run, as well as Icy Mist. These are just two extremely talented players having another good run under their belt. In 7th place, you had both Epic Gabriel and Icy Mist. Starting off with Icy Mist, who was able to get wins on Wilds and Ice Knight in the winner's side of bracket. And then to get into top 8, they were able to get a big win over Send. And what I feel like is a fairly tough matchup, but Samus is a ridiculous character, as well as Icy Mist probably being the best Samus that we have right now in North America. I'd still say best in the world probably goes to Yara or Siski, especially after Battle of BC. But Icy Mist is ridiculously good, like just insanely talented. Epic Gabriel as well was able to beat Skittles at a regional, which is like really impressive. He gets like a massive power up here, as well as Yoda Cage, who again beat Apollo Kage with Bowser Jr. It was actually ridiculous. Like, Epic Gabriel, it's been a little bit since I've seen him make top 8 at these tournaments, so super happy for his run, as well as Icy Mist. These are just two extremely talented players having another good run under their belt. In 5th place, you had Beast Mode Paul and Base Mage. Starting off with Base Mage, who brought that Battle of BC magic that I wanted so badly for him to bring. He was able to beat Comet, Skittles, and Icy Mist to get into winner's side of top 8, where he unfortunately did lose both of his matchup, but looked really impressive here. Again, he's getting some very consistent results with Jigglypuff, a character that you don't really see for consistency. That's a character that you think if it's like, yeah, they could have a what-off tournament where they do super well, maybe even top 8 the whole thing, but over and over again, Base Mage is performing. He got 17th at Battle BC, top 8 at this tournament through winner's side of bracket, looking insanely strong. And then Beast Mode Paul, what a run from him as well. One of the best ones we've ever seen from a hero player, especially and I know he did use a combination of hero and Sephiroth as well, beating D3Well and Viri in the winner's side of bracket, as well as getting a huge win on Mutace and Icy Mist in the loser's side of bracket. I mean, Hero's a character that I think is extremely underrated and will continue to have uprising success because I think his buffs are broken, his normals are broken, his spells are broken. Hero's just like a very good character, and it's nice to see Beast Mode Paul perform with it. In 4th place, you had Deathspade, and 3rd place, you had Lima, the two Bayonetta players of the tournament. Though Deathspade did use a little bit of Sora, which I was not familiar about, but huge shouts to him for that because you don't have a ton of Sora representation. Deathspade was able to beat Icona, Send, and Epic Gabriel to get into the top 8, and once they were in the top 8, they had to go against Lima, which never sounds like a fun time. It was Sora versus Bayonetta, though Lima did win, and then in the loose side of bracket, they were able to beat Beast Mode Paul. And for Lima, he did most of his run through the winner's side, and by most, I mean all of it, being able to beat Deathspade in the Ditto once he was in top 8. But before top 8, he was able to beat a couple players, like most notably Goblin, Doorstop, and Beast. And Goblin had just beaten Geist earlier, so Bayonetta got to be doing good at this bracket. I mean, Bayonetta is a character that's just been having a lot of success recently, and it kind of makes a lot of sense because you have players like Geist, Deathspade, who are extremely talented, and Lima as well, like a top 30 player, and then Bloom Forever, of course, in Europe. I could talk about him for days, so I won't, but these guys are definitely making believe that Bayonetta could still be that top tier character that she was in Smash 4. In 2nd place, you had Apollo Kage, and 1st place, you had Louise. We'll start with Apollo Kage, who had by far the best run of the weekend out of any of these tournaments because he just got so many sets in a row. As I said earlier, he lost fairly early on to Yoda Cage, and in a row beat Vidrocker, Chumples, Viri, Peebnut, and Goblin, who he had previously lost to at Battle of BC, to make top 8. Once he was in the top 8, he beat Epic Gabriel, Base Mage, as well as both the Bayonetta players of Deathspade and Lima, and was able to reset the bracket versus Louise. Was not able to get the win, but a lot of resilience coming out from Apollo Kage after this run, as well as coming off a bit of an underperformance from Battle of BC. It looked like he could have potentially done it here, but he held his mental ground and was able to make this crazy losers run. Really, really happy with that. And then we have Louise getting a big win. It's been a little bit since we've seen Luis win a huge event. It's kind of been a while since we've seen Paulo do really well at a tournament outside of Jagaimo, of course, performing fairly well in Japan. But for Luis, you got to wins over to Sean Piedmont and Beast Mode Paul to be able to make the top 8. Once in top 8, he was able to beat Base Mage, Lima, and then was able to get a big win over Apollo Kage in the reset. I predicted Luis to overperform his seed this tournament, but I didn't think that he would have the momentum to be able to win. It's so hard to win with Palutena, and the way that Luis is closing out these games, like, it feels like every single game that Luis plays is a clutch, which is like the worst time for Palutena because she has no X Factor, doesn't have any easy way to steal the game. But Luis, it feels like he always closes it out. Just such a solid player fundamentally, and he's so fun to watch. And I'm just happy for him to be able to get his first big win in a really long time, if his first one ever. And I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We covered a lot in this video, and unfortunately, we can't cover everything because there was 3 events this weekend, and they were all fairly stacked. But if there's any player that I left out, just let me know down below. I'll be sure to tell you how I think the run is. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I thank you guys for watching. The sport's been absolutely unreal lately, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.